Buffy the Vampire Slayer is a fantasy TV show created by Joss Whedon that ran from 1997 to 2003. It is about a girl called Buffy who is constantly struggling to balance her destiny as the Slayer, whose duty it is to protect the world from vampires and demons, and maintaining the life of a normal teenage girl.
So Giles, got anything that could make this day any worse?
How about the end of the world?
Knew I could count on you.
In this video, I will compare two particularly notable episodes of the show, Hush and Once More with Feeling. In Season 4, Episode 11, Hush, a group of fairy tale monsters called the Gentlemen come to Sunnydale and steal everyone's voices, sending the entire town into silent chaos. Buffy must defeat them while facing her own problems, like keeping her identity as the Slayer hidden from Riley, who she is awkwardly attempting to pursue a romance with. Hush was also the only episode of Buffy to be nominated for an Emmy in writing, which is ironic considering only 17 of its 44 minutes contain any dialogue. A season and a half later, Buffy has just been resurrected from the dead by her friends, and is facing extreme depression as she readjusts to normal life. During this time, Season 6, Episode 7, Once More with Feeling, takes place, in which a demon is summoned that makes everyone in Sunnydale burst into song uncontrollably, causing Buffy and her friends to reveal secrets that they have been keeping from each other. Both of these episodes deal with the challenges of being honest and communicating well with the people we love, but express them in different and interesting ways, through genre, music, and visuals. While these two episodes are part of the same TV series, so take place in a fantasy universe full of demons, vampires, and magic, they depart wildly from the usual format of the show, and intentionally reference other genres. Joss Whedon, who wrote and directed both Hush and Once More with Feeling, often combines and subverts different genres in his work. While I would argue that every episode of Buffy is somewhat influenced by horror, Hush is a particularly intentional demonstration of the genre. Whedon uses visuals and plot techniques commonly associated with horror, such as dark lighting, jump scares, a tense chase scene, and of course, a terrifying monster. The cinematography also enhances the atmosphere and horror elements of the episode. The camera is often alive and in motion, conveying with movement what the characters cannot speak. For example, the push in on Riley at the frat house, as all hell breaks loose. The camera movement charges the scene with a sense of peril and imperative that would have been impossible otherwise. Once More with Feeling, on the other hand, is a musical. While it was not the first musical episode of TV, Joss Whedon's take on this trope is perhaps one of the most famous. He pays homage to old-style musicals through a classic structure and style of writing in his songs. For example, the classic I Want song, sang by the protagonist about what they hope to achieve and what their goals are. This is sang by Buffy at the beginning of the episode. Or the beautiful love ballad sung by Tara to her girlfriend Willow. He also uses cinematography and visuals to add a happy, joyful atmosphere to the episode, things that most audiences expect from a musical. He shot in widescreen, giving the episode a more open and stage-like quality to it. He uses long, sweeping shots to give the scenes an energetic and lively feel, and uses a vibrant, colourful palette to make the episode feel happy and bright. Despite this apparent joyfulness, Once More with Feeling has a much darker plot than Hush. Hush begins the episode with Buffy and her friends feeling somewhat lost and confused in their relationships with one another. But by the time the episode ends, these issues have been resolved, for the most part, and the season can continue forward with these strengthened relationships in mind. Once More with Feeling begins with Buffy and her friends in a seemingly happy and content place in their lives, although the audience is aware of the many issues that they all have, but by the end of the episode, they have been forced to reveal secrets that eventually tear the group apart. For example, Xander and Anya both revealing the huge doubts they have about their relationship to each other through song, or Buffy revealing that she feels depressed and numb because her friends brought her back to a world she doesn't want to live in. This causes a rift in her relationship with her best friend Willow, who feels crippling guilt at what she has done. So despite the apparent happy and joyful atmosphere of the episode, its underlying plot and character commentary is incredibly grim, and sets up the darkest season of the show, filled with addiction metaphors, depression, and abusive or problematic relationships. Similarly, Hush is much more terrifying on the surface, but the characters are not facing nearly as much trauma, and by the end of the episode, most of the conflict is resolved. Hush serves to strengthen and build up relationships between the characters, while Once More with Feeling's job is to tear them apart. It is in this way that Joss Whedon subverts the classic genres of horror and musical, while also using their common features and tropes to his advantage. While the genres and functions of these episodes are very different, they share many common themes, the main one being communication. In each episode, the characters are forced to communicate in a different way than they normally would. Both episodes begin with the characters somewhat stuck in terms of development and their relationships with each other because of the lack of ability to communicate. The theme of language and communication is threaded through the entire episode, with Professor Walsh's opening statement articulating the main point of the episode.
So this is what it is. Talking about communication. Talking about language. Not the same thing.
At the beginning of the episode, each character is suffering a communication crisis. Xander can't express his love to Anya through words, and Anya can only communicate in clunky anvil language.
All you care about is lots of orgasms.
Willow attempts to meet other witches at university and ends up being wildly misunderstood by the Wicca group that doesn't actually do any spells.
Who left their scented candles dripping all over my woman power shrine?
Riley and Buffy can't progress in their relationship because every time they're about to kiss, one of them blocks it with too much talking. And all Buffy's exhausted mentor Giles wants is for the talking to go away. Joss Whedon says in his commentary for Hush, "I believe language can interfere with communication, because as soon as you say something, you've eliminated every other possibility of what you're talking about." Whedon uses the lack of language in this episode to advance character development and build relationships in ways he couldn't have done otherwise. For example, resolving the conflict between Xander and Anya by having Xander show how much he loved her, which would not have been possible without this lack of language. Buffy and Riley are also able to have their first kiss in this episode after they are unable to block it with words. This idea of the limitations of language is also heavily present in Once More with Feeling. The characters begin the episode with underlying issues that they aren't expressing. Buffy is hiding her depression from her friends, Xander and Anya have doubts about their decision to get married, Willow has put a spell on her girlfriend Tara to make her forget about an argument that they had and hide her growing addiction to magic, while Giles feels like he is holding Buffy back by remaining a father figure in her life. Each character is struggling with something that is affecting the way that they behave and their relationships with one another, but feels unable to communicate this to the rest of the group. The use of songs forces them to open up about how they feel and communicate to others in a much more raw and emotional way, while also setting up the plot for the rest of the season and laying the groundwork for various character arcs. For example, Buffy sings about how she feels like she's living in hell after being yanked out of the peaceful bliss of death. This sets up her character arc for the rest of the season as she continues to struggle with depression and tears a rift in her relationship with her friends, particularly Willow, who feels guilty for causing her so much pain. The singing also forces Xander and Anya to confront doubts that they have about their relationship and communicate with each other about it, for better or for worse. While the impact of the communication between the characters is different, this theme of the difficulty of communicating and the limitation of language is highly emphasized in both Once More with Feeling and Hush. Joss Whedon even connects the two episodes in his commentary for Once More with Feeling. He says, "I'm obsessive about progressing the plot in a song, about saying things we haven't already said. A musical is a chance for people to express things they couldn't otherwise express. I often refer to this as a sequel to Hush in that respect." While both episodes share this theme, the source of the conflict for each episode is very different. In Hush, the source of the conflict is the Gentlemen, a group of old white men in Victorian suits. They are all prim, proper, and polite as they terrorize the towns they have come to and have footmen to hold down their victims because, as Whedon says, the gentlemen would not sully themselves, struggling with these lower beings. They represent repressive upper-class institution, literally floating 6 inches above the ground, illustrating their place in high society. This is contrasted with the familial atmosphere created before the gentlemen arrive. We see Willow and Buffy chatting in their dorm room, and Giles and Spike becoming adorably domestic, despite the fact that Spike is Giles' captive.
We're out of Weetabix.
We are out of Weetabix because you ate it all.
Even Xander and Anya entering Giles' house without knocking shows the familiar relationships they have with each other, despite their problems communicating. This theme of chosen community versus repressive institution is common in Whedon's work and is heavily present in this episode. As a result of this external source of conflict, Buffy and her friends are forced to communicate in new and different ways, strengthening their relationships with one another and their community. In contrast to this, the conflict in Once More with Feeling is internal. While the cause of the conflict is a demon named Sweet, forcing them all to burst into song and eventually spontaneously combust, this only serves to bring to the surface issues that were present all along. This is articulated by Sweet himself after Buffy and her friends defeat him.
All those secrets you've been concealing, say you're happy now, once more with feeling.
He has simply brought issues within the group to their attention rather than inflicted any harm himself. The episode ends with everyone's secrets out in the open, and each of the characters asking, "Where do we go from here?" Consequently, Once More with Feeling has the opposite effect of Hush in this respect. While the external conflict in Hush forces the characters to communicate in different ways, bringing them closer together and helping them to form new relationships, Once More with Feeling forces the characters to confront their problems head-on, and the main plot of the season is propelled by the inner conflict within the group brought to the forefront by this episode. Music is used effectively in both Hush and Once More with Feeling. It is important in both episodes, but functions in different ways. In Hush, music serves to enhance the emotion and mood of a scene, the traditional function of music in media. However, with no dialogue over it, Christoph Beck's score blossoms and charges the episode with emotion and atmosphere. For example, during the scene where the gentlemen float through the streets of Sunnydale at night. The music feels somehow contemporary and like a fairy tale throwback all at once, and is used in a similar way to old silent films, which much of this episode essentially is. The dynamics used in the score are also effective. Whedon and Beck know when to double down on the music and when silence is more impactful. For instance, the scene where Tara is picking up her things, with only ambient audio and the gentleman slowly coming towards her, or the jarring sound of someone dropping a glass bottle amid the complete silence of the university early in the episode. The use of music and dynamic techniques serves to enhance the aspects of this episode already present, whether it's fear, tension, or heightened emotion. On the other hand, the music in Once More with Feeling contains the majority of the plot and character development. It is an essential component for the episode, and is the means through which communication is taking place. This means that it is just as cleverly written as Whedon's dialogue and is packed with subtext and character commentary. For instance, the double meaning in Tara's song Under Your Spell, which is on the surface a beautiful profession of her love for Willow, but carries a cutting reminder that she is literally under Willow's spell, as Willow has performed a spell to make Tara forget about an argument that they had about Willow's growing addiction to magic. This is then reprised later in the episode when Tara realizes what she has done and knows that she has to end their relationship, along with Giles, who has just had a similar realization that he has to leave and let Buffy fend for herself.
I don't wanna go, and it'll grieve me 'cause I love you so.
So while music is highly important and effective in both Hush and Once More with Feeling, it plays a similar role to dialogue in Once More with Feeling, whereas in Hush it is used to enhance and build up the atmosphere of the episode. Overall, Hush and Once More with Feeling are linked in many different ways, particularly through their connecting themes of communication and relationships. They both illustrate how language can sometimes be a barrier to true communication, and the difficulty of being honest and communicating effectively with the people we love. They explore this theme through the use of specific genres to set up audience expectations and then subvert them, making both of these episodes feel more nuanced and impactful. Their place in the show also affects how these episodes function. Hush takes place in Season 4, during Buffy and her friends' first year of university. This is a time in their lives where they are discovering more about themselves and forming new relationships, which Hush helps to build up. But by Season 6, when Once More with Feeling takes place, the characters have been through much more trauma and hardship and are now facing the struggles of adulthood. Season 6 deals with heavy themes such as depression, addiction, and abusive relationships, and Once More with Feeling is at a key point in the season. It serves as a catalyst for the characters' relationships with each other to fall apart, and sets in motion many key plot points for the season. While both episodes achieve what they set out to do, the stakes are higher in Once More with Feeling because of its ambitious role in the season. This shows how Whedon developed as a writer and a director, placing more faith in himself and allowing his more experimental episodes to carry important plot points and character moments.